Ayman Khan here, 4 seconds out with renowned trainer Shane McGuigan. Shane, good to see you. We'll skip the niceties as we've been chatting off camera, but great to see you and great to see some of your fighters with fight dates penciled in. Billam-Smith against Zurdo Ramirez, unification fight over in Riyadh. He's had the home tie at Bournemouth. He's had the away tie, Crystal Palace. Now he's got the neutral venue over in Riyadh against Zurdo Ramirez. Just talk me through the fight and the prospect of fighting Zurdo Ramirez.
Well, it's a neutral venue, but it's not a neutral show. It's a Golden Boy show, and he's promoted by Golden Boy. We've done our best to make sure that things were on equal terms in the sense like judges, ring, hand wraps, just the finite details. So that's why we took a while to get everything confirmed and announced, and His Excellency put it out quite early, but we had a few things just to brush up. We knew we were going to get there. It's just we had to argue the points on it, and happy that we finally got that. So yeah, it's a big fight, man. It's a unification fight. I don't think I would have ever thought Billam-Smith at the start of his career with his amateur pedigree, didn't have an extensive amateur pedigree, but he's taken to the pro game so well, and I'm a proud coach and friend to basically witness him going to the biggest stage in boxing in Saudi Arabia. And I think, with the last few ones being pay-per-views, I think, His Excellency wants to put, obviously he's got the October 12th, it's going to be a pay-per-view as well, but he wants to put that next show out and get as many eyeballs as possible. And I hear that he's going to be giving it to a lot of the platforms for free as a sort of give back. And, it's up to us to put on, or Chris, to put on a fantastic performance and showcase what it's truly about, and also not be in a boring fight. But he's boxing a Mexican, so I'm sure he won't be. And also it's Billam-Smith, he loves a scrap.
I was watching back some of Zurdo's fights in his last fight at cruiserweight against Gilberto, and I think the commentators were saying he kind of comes in around 210, 220, but he doesn't look like he's kind of filled into that cruiserweight frame as of just yet, even though he is a brutal fighter. Do you feel like, attributes-wise of Chris's physicality, there's a lot to play into your favour here, as well as then just the fighting styles of both of them, where it's going to gel well for being a good fight, but Chris can maybe take over in the stretch?
In terms of use his size down the stretch. Yeah, but I don't think it's not going to come down to it. I don't think it's going to be a physical fight, because Gilberto is a big man. He's a powerful guy, and that didn't work for him. It's about shot selection. It's about volume. It's about making sure that you don't switch off. Ramirez has got a good punch output. He's got that punch output of a light heavyweight, even though he's filled into the cruiserweight frame. He's tough. He's durable. It's a hard fight. It is a very, very hard fight. It's a completely different fight to the likes of an Opetaia fight, where it will be a bit more explosive. But there's less volume. There's more phases in his feet. This guy's going to stand there. He's going to let his hands go, and he's willing to mix it with big lads. And I think if we get hung up trying to muscle it, then we will probably get outworked. So it's important for us to strategically get it correct.
Whilst the focus will purely be on Zurdo Ramirez, an eye on Opetaia versus Massey, a future showdown with Opetaia. And just your thoughts on him. I was saying to Chris earlier that the kind of look and perspective on Opetaia maybe 8-9 months ago was he was unbeatable and invincible, but that's kind of sort of peeled off a little bit with the 2 fights against Breedis, and maybe himself sort of tiring down the stretch if you really put it on him. What's your thoughts on kind of Opetaia and a potential future showdown with Chris?
People are labelling him as the number one in the division, and I get that, because he's beaten the man. He's beaten Breidis. But Breidis had the flu the first fight and broke his jaw. And then he's had some good wins since then against Jordan Thompson and El Asoro. But look at what Chevron Clark's just done to El Asoro. And look at Jordan Thompson. He hasn't had any notable wins. I remember Chris boxed a guy, a tough guy, I can't actually remember his name, and dropped him a load of times, and that guy had Jordan Thompson out on his feet in the last round of a 10-rounder. So there was vulnerabilities there in terms of for Jordan Thompson, and Opetaia exposed them, but Massey's not that guy. He's a durable guy. He's gone 10 rounds with Joseph Parker. He's just come off a good win against Isaac Chamberlain. Do I think he's going to be able to bring a lot, like exposed Jai Opetaia? No, because Bradis did well in the return, even though he's a tired, older version of himself. Like, he lost the opening round and he pressed it late on, but he just didn't have the gears and that youth and athleticism to be able to like win those rounds. Whereas, and I don't know if Massey's got that ability, but I think he'll give him things to think about. And I think we'll get a bit of a bigger or a better gauge of what Opetaia is really about after this one.
Just spoke to Caroline to get the sense that she's got itchy knuckles, waiting for a fight date, waiting to turn that interim title into the full version of the title. Whether it will be against a Pioneer, against Katie Taylor or not, remains to be seen. But when is she next out, and when do you feel she can really kind of crown herself world champion?
She's just ready to get the opportunity. Do you know what I mean? It's like boxers done a fantastic job keeping her active, getting her the exposure and the fights. You know, John Wish, we've worked, you know, very closely with John Wish over the last couple of years to get her the right fights. And I feel like the people that she's boxed are good. You know, they've been competitive fights and she's learnt a lot from them. But now it's like, let's take the reins off and just let her go, because she's ready and willing to fight anybody. So she needs a couple of breakout fights, whether, you know, that's the winner of Rhiannon Dixon versus Terry Harper, or, you know, the Beatrix, or you know, Katie Taylor. I'm not sure where Katie Taylor will go after this fight. Most likely she'll stay at 140. So, you know, but we need a big name. We need someone that we can, you know, match her against, and she can showcase what she's truly about. Obviously, Baumgarten as well. She's 130 pounder, but could potentially move up. So there's lots of decent opportunities out there, but it's just about one or two showcase performance, and she'll be the girl that everyone wants to box, because she'll hold all the cards, and I think she's gonna be the face of female boxing.
Adam out in action as well off the back of an injury against Ohara Davies. I was a little bit surprised that the fight was announced and Ohara Davies was the opponent, considering that you've game planned for Ohara Davies before to a brilliant effect with Josh Taylor. I thought maybe Ohara Davies might have looked at it and thought this might be a task a bit too far for him.
It's money for him. I think it's money and opportunity. You know, he's had a loss in his last one, and, you know, got himself up to fighting for a world title, and really this makes the most sense. Like, Eddie's not going to work with him. Not sure Frank will. Golden Boy had an option on him, so yeah, it's a good fight. I mean, Harlem Eubank, I get it, I understand. Like, we did schedule it on June the 15th. Adam had to pull out of an injury. Then they wanted to headline it on August the 31st, but due to the Olympics and Sky, they didn't quite have a date and a venue that they were quite happy with, and they weren't going to go in London in September. And because of Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, massive fight and hard to sell tickets and stuff. And at the end of the day, this has to make sense financially. So we looked to go down to Brighton and to, you know, stage it down there, but then he pulled out. So he just wasn't. He wanted to go a separate route. Changed. He was being looked after by Chris Eubank Senior. Now he's not. He's getting looked after by Jamie Conlon. And things just didn't work out. So, you know, they chose to go a separate route, and we looked for a replacement. We were essentially going to box somebody that's challenged for a world title or former world champion. We were looking around for some American names, and then got put to us, what about Ohara Davies? And was like, okay, let's take that.
Were those digs at the press conference here? Ohara came to you beforehand, and you both, well, I think you went to Ohara actually and shook his hand, and I think at the press conference then he decided to kind of take it a different way, but Adam seemed to handle that situation very well. Did you speak to Adam in the aftermath of that press conference?
Of course, yeah. Yeah. So Adam did brilliantly. I thought he handled the situation fantastically. I don't think O'Hara's necessarily a bad lad. I think he's been put up to it by his manager Lee Eaton and things like that. There's obviously the squad, the old MTK squad, still there, trying to get him to try and say things, but it's all just a typical agenda, mate. It's just, we just roll with it and just keep going. And at the end of the day, I just don't want him to pull out. I want him to turn up to the fight and box so they can both get paid, and Adam can win and move on.
I imagine you won't be game planning for the Ohara Davies that came in against Ismael Barroso.
Oh, no. I mean, they say that you're only as good as your last fight. I genuinely don't believe that's a true reflection of Ohara Davies. I think he's still got much more to give in the sport than that. And got complacent, walked onto a good shot. So, he knows he can't afford to have a performance like that again at this stage of his career. So he's going to be training really, really hard. And, it's down to Adam to make sure that, he's switched on, because Ohara's a world-class puncher, and, there's definitely chinks in his armour, but, he's also got that world-class power. So it's about being strategically, smart with it, and making sure you execute the game plan.
Would you say this would be the last juncture before going to a world title fight for Adam?
Yeah, the 140-pound division is very, very stacked, isn't it? So, and it's moving all the time. Got people that have just come into the division in Devin Haney and potentially moving out of the division. He might move up to 147. So, yeah, it's just about continuing the journey for Adam Azim. He's 22 years of age. He's full of talent. He needs better. He needs more experience. He needs, more challenging fights. Everything's been on his terms. He needs to have one or two more acid tests, but he's knocking on the door of a world title. I think this, Ohara was highly ranked with the WBA. He's not ranked anymore because he's coming off a knockout loss, but the other governing bodies will see that and recognize that he is a very good opponent, and that Adam can continue to work his way up the rankings. And at the end of the day, we're not fully focusing on a world title right now. We're focusing on Adam Azim and making sure that he becomes a complete fighter, because when he does get to world level, it's about staying a world champion, not just winning a world title and and checking out. It's about trying to be the best version of yourself. And I believe if you keep looking for that, striving for those extra percentages, then good things happen. You end up fighting for unified titles. You can potentially move up. So all of these things are in front of him. He just has to stay locked in and just keep preparing, for the best fighters on the planet.
What's your take on the real public kind of push for the Dalton Smith versus Adam Azim fight and for negotiation to happen so publicly and so fast?
That's the way Eddie does it. Eddie did it with Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg. He just likes to do that. He likes to try and expose people, because that's how he makes his money. He makes his money by trying to belittle other people and tell them, oh, you didn't take that fight and you didn't do this and do that. Like he did with Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark. But is Wardley still with him? I don't think.
No, he's with Queensbury.
So Wardley's now not with him. So, and Fraser Clark's on a separate platform. So now he has got no skin in the game in that fight, but he still built that fight up. So Eddie sometimes gets carried away with things, and I think Dalton Smith, imagine if he went and signed with somebody else and then the fight got made and he'd helped build this fight over 2 years, and then Dalton, say he gets signed by Wasserman or Frank Warren and we make the fight and he doesn't get a penny from it, he'd be kicking himself. So Eddie just needs to make sure that he sees it in the long term, in the long term basis, that these fighters have left him in the past. They can leave him in the future, and you don't want to give people like Adam Azim extra exposure, because he's helping build Adam Azim's profile. Do you know what I mean? He's got no monetary value out of him. So. But yeah, I mean, the fight will make sense at some stage, and I think Adam beats him. I think Adam stops him. I genuinely believe it, and I think what we've got right now with Riyadh season is the ability to pay these fighters good money, life-changing money, quite early on in their career for fights like that. Whereas normally it would have to be earned. You'd have to box your way up, win a world title, then the old school journalist, would be writing, articles about you being the greatest and somebody else in the UK like Dalton Smith being fantastic and can't wait to see that fight. Like back in the day, they used to do it with, Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. It was talked about for such a long period of time. These things, when they did box, it was too late, but they still made loads of money from it. When George Groves boxed James DeGale, he got paid. I said this in an interview the other day. He must, I don't know what the exact figures are, but he would have got paid 30 times more to box Jamie Cox than he did James DeGale, which is madness. Yeah, because there's no rivalry or no history there, but it's just timing. When someone wins a world title and you get an opportunity like the WBSS coming in, or even you build it up and you get a pay-per-view like he did against Froch Groves too in Wembley. Like that's where you make your money. You don't make it at British level on like a as a chief support or something like that. It's not how it works. You have to fight and get the right exposure. And so that's just it.
Speaking of getting carried away, a lot of people are getting carried away in the aftermath of Anthony Joshua's resounding defeat to Daniel Dubois at Wembley last weekend. A lot of people are now calling Anthony Joshua to retire. If Anthony Joshua still got it anymore, just from a trainer's perspective, from what you saw, what was your take from that fight and the potential rebuild AJ's got in front of him now?
Doesn't need to rebuild. He just needs to win the rematch if they can get it. I said it in an interview yesterday that I don't believe that doing a rebuild process has done anything for him in the past. I don't know, like it's just lining his pockets, but he's got his pockets lined. It's just putting more miles on the clock by going through hard training camps and for the inevitable to happen, to fight for the big fights. And if you get it wrong then, there's no change, because only fighting subpar opposition can just make you complacent. And we all know that he's a world level fighter. You don't become a two-time world champion if you're not a world-class fighter. He has world-class vulnerabilities though, but he's also got world-class power, and that's what makes him box office. That's what made George Groves box office, because it's like, okay, he's got the power to knock people out, but also he can get hurt. That's the entertainment business. He would not have been so confident going into that camp, that fight, if he was shot. If he should retire, like physically, he's still got it. He's about to turn 35 years of age, but like mentally, he needs work, like himself. But he also has to have confidence in people around him, and just like, and that fearless mentality. So it's just down to what he wants from his life. He's made generational money. Like he doesn't have to work a day in his life. His kids don't have to work a day in their life. Like they can follow their passion and dreams, and that's what he set out to achieve from when he started boxing, to make sure him and his family change their life for good, and he's done that. But he clearly loves fighting, hence the reason he still wants to continue. But we're in it to watch the best versus the best. There's a reason why we've got world titles. We want to see the best people versus the best. We don't want to see, if you said right now, okay, like we watched James Toney versus Roy Jones Jr. when they were in their pomp. Like, let's watch that shit again. But they're like, no one wants to see that. No one's going to pay to see that. We want to see them when they're in their physical prime. And Tyson Fury rolled back the clock in the Usyk fight. I thought it was one of the best performances he's put in a long time. I looked at him versus Chisora and Dylan White, and I thought, he's slipping a little bit here. And there was rumours that he wasn't performing in camp, but he turned it round. And AJ, he's got it to turn around. He's still physically there. It's just about figuring out what you're doing it for, and then figuring out the repercussions of your actions. And you can't fight a certain way. It's world-class fighting. You've got to be on it.
In the fallout, there's a clip of you on BBC 5 Live talking through the commentary, and you're giving your analysis, and you gave a suggestion there that the uppercut wasn't the right move at that point in time to go for. Now, can you break down from a trainer's perspective as to why that? I
don't need to break it down. It is what it is. It's pretty evident. I mean, I said it in the. I listened to the instructions and I just voiced my opinion and the dangers of looking for specific shots. And yeah, I mean, it just happened that way. But yeah.
Could you, just from a technical point, why was the uppercut not the right shot to throw in that situation?
If you ask that question, you shouldn't be doing this job. In that sense,
I am a layman. I'm definitely not an expert boxer.
Well, I don't need to explain it. It's just, it's just the way it is. Yeah, don't want to educate everybody.
Fair enough. Just for the future, then, for a potential rematch for AJ, how big are the changes then that would have to be made from his offensive or defensive point of view to change the victory the second time, or change the outcome the second time around?
I believe he can win the fight. It's just he has to box a specific way, and just got to get the right approach. So it's just whether he believes it, and he's got the right people to teach it, and also get the right sparring and condition himself. You know what I mean? Because habits are formed in the gym. There's habits that were presenting themselves throughout that fight, and they're formed in the gym. They're formed you choreograph things time and time again in training, that when you get in there, it's just second nature. You don't, even if you're buzzed and hurt, you're still so conditioned and so choreographed that you don't make fundamental flaws like that he was making. So I don't think, that's what I'm saying, like dropping yourself to subpar competition can create bad habits.
We focus on AJ there. What of Daniel? Just how good was he? And I imagine like you kind of saw Daniel kind of growing into what he's become now, and having moments like this, having seen him and worked with him for so long in the gym here. How much has he progressed since leaving you and going with Don?
Yeah, I mean, like when he come to the gym, he just didn't understand what an intensity he needed to train at. Like it was so far off the mark. Like he could punch with speed, but he could punch with speed for like 1 or 2 shots, and it would exhaust him. And this was after the Joe Joyce fight. So he was just way off the mark, and he didn't realize, like, he was training in an environment where it was just all on him previously. And obviously world-class puncher, so he's probably knocking out guys in the gym and feeling like he's invincible. But there's a huge difference between like domestic level heavyweights and world-class level heavyweights. It's probably the biggest difference in margin in all divisions, because there's so little room for error. So like when he comes to me, he'd been boxing since he was like 7 years of age, I think it was. So, we worked on, he knew how to throw a jab, he knew how to tuck himself in on a jab. He was a phenomenal puncher, as I said, but like it was all coming out very laboured, and there was no feints, there was no head movement and things like that off it. And because he was biomechanically set up a specific way, but I felt like we did a lot of that work in the gym. And he Bogdan Danu, he knocked him out in a round and a half. Joey Casamano, he knocked him out in 30 seconds. Trevor Bright knocked him out in a round and a half. And then he got, he had that Kevin Lerena fight, which went like 4 rounds, but literally severed his ACL. He had about 3% of his ACL remaining intact after that. Dislocate, like when he hyperextended his knee, still got the win. So, we didn't get a chance to really showcase because he wasn't in there with, Kevin Lerena is a decent opponent, but like he wasn't in there with a world-class opposition. So, he's got that inner belief now because he's had a good few wins. Like he was still knocked from the Joyce loss when he was in the gym, and then he went and got beaten by Usyk. But there was a turning point between Usyk and Gerald Miller. Like when he stopped Gerald Miller, like they were exhausted after 5 rounds, the two of them. But then he came through and he stopped him, and then he carried that confidence over like into the Hrgovic or Hrgovic. I keep getting it wrong. Everyone fucking screams at me for saying it. Hrgovic fight, and that was his biggest win. Do you know what I mean? Like AJ as well was a fantastic win, but yeah, it's good to see. I'm happy to see it. I advised when Stan and Daniel were parting ways, because I was continuing to train Caroline. They asked me. Frank Warren was adamant. He said, Frank Warren wants Daniel to go to Ben Davison. And the dad said, "What do you think, Shane?" And I said, "I think that's the wrong move. I think you should go to Don Charles because he's used to training heavyweights. He's going to give a lot of time to you, and he is a senior person. And for Daniel, like he has so much respect and time for his dad, who's a senior man. He's 63 years of age. Don's similar age. And I worked that out that, you know, when my dad was in the gym, Hall of Famer, former world champion, Daniel would be a bit more responsive. So I was like, okay, this is what he needs. And he needs that. He doesn't need someone to teach him how to throw a jab, defend a jab, or move his head. Like, you can do that you can spend hours on end trying to get Daniel to do that. And he can do it, but then he might, like Ogovic, like he got hit with plenty of right hands because he switches off, and he just mentally switches off at times. And that's his vulnerabilities. But then, like, you know, he needs that. He needs to be able to come back and have that belief in his team and in his corner to say, like, okay, like, I'm doing it for them, and you know, these people are like, they get me and they understand, like, that seek and destroy mentality. Like, that's what Don said, is seek and destroy. And you know, when you get Daniel Dubois in that mindset, he's a nightmare. He's a handful for any heavyweight on the planet, which is what I've always been saying. It's just that, you know, it's just he's now doing it on the biggest stage possible.
He does seem to draw a lot of strength from his dad being in the corner now. It seems to, I don't know if it's like an extra bit of gene him on or whatever it is, but with that working the way it is that something, like, from a trainer's perspective, like, you don't change, you just keep that going if it's working? Well,
it was funny because when he was in the gym with myself, it was at a stage in his life where I feel like he needed to grow. So I had conversations with the dad, and I said, if you don't change his mentality now, he'll never change. Like, he'll never grow up, and he'll never take responsibility or ownership for anything. And, you know, simple tasks that you go through life, like, you know, going to a shop, paying with your phone, or paying, you know, just little things like that. If everything's bought for you, or if you get in a car and you get driven everywhere, like, you're programmed to fight, and this is a mission, and it's like, that's what you need to do. But, like, you have to also grow up. And, like, he got his driving license when he was in the gym. You know, he did a lot of growing in the gym, not just from a boxing standpoint, but, like, you're surrounded by different kids, and interacting, because I know before, like, Bowers only had really Daniel. He was, like, putting his full focus in, and Daniel trained on his own, and he was in that time, whereas he was surrounded. I know you've seen Stable, but he was surrounded by the group of us, and we were, you know, getting him as inclusive as possible. And, like, now he's probably found that balance where, yeah, he has independence, but he also has that security and support system of his dad, Don's team, and that's fitting. You know, it's working for him. So I'm happy for them all. You know, especially Don Charles, because it's his first world champion. He's been in the game 20 years, and he rang me last night actually for a good 20 minutes. We had a good chat. He said, "Oh, it's a bit awkward." I said, "No, Don, it's not awkward, because at the end of the day, like, we decided to go this path, and that's just the way it is. Like, yeah, monetary wise, but, like, I'm in this sport because I love it, you know, and I want to be able to, like, look in the mirror when I'm, you know, 20 years down the line and be like, hey, you stuck to your morals, and you stuck to doing what what you set out to do. And you know, I feel like Don deserves the opportunity that he got when it comes to working with a great athlete like Daniel, and they've been a great fit, and I think they should continue and stay on that fit for good. I mean, it's exactly what Daniel needs.
Do you think Don will get the credit that he deserves from the industry?
Yeah, but I mean, he should do, because, you know, he's not going to be the right fit for everybody, but he's the right fit for Dan. So, and at the end of the day, like, Customato, was he the right fit for everyone? No, he was the right fit for Tyson. Do you know what I mean? So that's because he was a mentor. That's what certain people need, and that's what's been the best fit for Dan. And I think it's a good combination.
What about for the future for Dan? I think he deserves a big opportunity, and maybe has one eye on the winner of Usyk versus Fury 2, but maybe if he takes a fight in the meantime or looks to seek for that fight, what do you think is on the horizon for him?
There's potential banana skins for Dan throughout the division. But that's the case for any heavyweight. It'll be the case for AJ, it'll be the case for Zile Zhang. There's potentially, like, it doesn't matter how good they are, like, there's always going to be fights that you think maybe not. So yeah, it's. I think. I mean, I've got a bit of stick to say. I think AJ and him should run it back because I think they should. I mean, if AJ wants to continue in the sport, I think, you know, it would be the right move for him to do that. And it's also the right move for Daniel Dubois because he gets the money that he deserves. Like that's the biggest payday for him because it's still going to sell out Wembley if they did it again. If they did it in Riyadh, it would sell there. And that's, you know, that's monetary wise the best opportunity for him potentially to wait for, you know, the winner of Usyk versus Fury. But if it was me, I'd say to him, like, yeah, go with that one again, and then also try and get the winner afterwards. And if he doesn't win the rematch, then he's got a third fight with AJ, and it's even better.
Just on that, the thought of him versus Fury, how would you think that fight would go?
I mean, he's a lot better than Francis Ngannou. So yeah, I mean, I think Tyson Fury struggles with guys like physically very imposing people. You know, I've always fancied AJ to give him a good run for his money, and that's the thing about boxing. It's, you know, we don't quite know what the outcome is going to be, but when people can close the gap and they hold power in combination, and then it, you know, he's gonna struggle with it because he's good at sort of messing people about and slowing the pace down and nicking rounds. But you know, and he boxed brilliantly against Usyk. I thought it was up until he got stunned and hurt, he was in a good groove. So, but I just don't know. I don't know how he'd hold up with Daniel's power.
Actually, just to take me back to that fight with Lerena and just managing that crisis moment for Daniel, what was that like, and how receptive was he to instructions in that moment? Because that could have been a real, like, it was a make or break moment, that fight at Wembley, and which really kind of helped build that confidence up for Daniel. Yeah,
I mean, it was got hit in the temple, caught cold, heavyweight boxing, legs went, and when he stepped back, he hyperextended his knee, which found out that it was like nearly a full rupture of the ACL, which had to go into surgery to get complete ACL replacement. And but he obviously got dropped 3 times, I think he did, in the first round, and he come back and he said, my knee's gone. And I think it was pretty evident in the corner what I told him. I said, you need to sit back and get him to walk onto a shot. I said, it's important. It was the most important fight, and it probably will be the most important fight of his whole entire career. Because if he'd have lost to Kevin Lerena, yeah, you lose to Usyk, you can come back. But losing to Kevin Lerena and getting dropped and stopped, like, there is no future. You get put in that bracket of, like, I'm not going to say it's put in the Nathan Gorman bracket, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you can just get completely forgotten about, and then you're in a long road back to coming back. So, and yeah, he overcame it, and what a shot to finish it.
At 27, as the template of a fighter, how much more pieces can you add to his game now, or is he pretty much as full as he can be going forward? Because right now he looks to be a real problem for a lot of the heavyweights.
He's still too hittable, but that's what Dan's always going to be. He's going to be hittable, but that's what makes him effective, is because he's willing to sort of let you start and punch with you. I think, physically he just needs to continue to work at that intensity, because once you get a guy with that athletic capability and that power and those raw ingredients, if you can get them to work at a tempo that is uncomfortable for their opponent, he's going to win most fights.
Will he ever be as good as he is with the gloves as he is on the mic? I saw an interview with him on TalkSport, and he spoke so well, and I thought maybe that's because the cameras and the lights were off of him, and he could just relax, and he's done the job that he'd set out to do. Can you tell us, like, what he's like, kind of, when the cameras aren't off of him, when you had chats with him?
Yeah, I mean, like, he's just a complete boxing person. Just wants, just focuses on boxing, and that's the way he thinks about it. He thinks about life in literally, but like as rounds. Like he it doesn't process a lot of other stuff, you know, in terms of just day-to-day life. But he's a nice, charismatic guy. Do you know what I mean? He's funny. He's good. He's good energy. So yeah, he will never be a talker. He's never going to be an Ali. But it's down to the people around him to talk for him, and you know, put him in as that bracket of like, this guy's a caged animal. He's like a beast. That like, I'm going to let this guy off the leash at you, like in this fight. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, rather than try and get him to talk, like it's down to Frank and the team around him to just like talk for him and put that fear of God into the opponent, because you know he's never going to be the guy that's, you know, spitting lyrics and poems like Ali or anything like that. So, but he can certainly fight.
Both those fighters proved heart on the night, with AJ especially, getting off the canvas, trying to get the victory, even in the moment where it seemed like, you know, he was hurt, and he did try to go for the finish there. A lot of people kind of questioned both those fighters' hearts, specifically more so AJ, where he was with his ambition, and you know, even though he didn't get the fight, he at least showed that the ambition and want and drive to try and get the victory is still there.
Yeah, I mean, you got that's if that goes, what are you? Do you know what I mean? So he's certainly got that, that's for sure. And Daniel, you know, has proved these last few fights that he's what he's about. And it's taken a while. I just think he turned pro far too young. When you're a heavyweight, you don't really mature until you're in your mid to late 20s, and he's only just 27 now, so he's only really just hitting his peak. So yeah, he, you know, emotionally, physically, he looked like a man at 17, like an absolute specimen, but emotionally, and he wasn't there. And that passion and that drive and desire and that grit, like that's built over time, and that's built through, you know, that hardship over years as a professional. And he's definitely finding that as he's got later on into his career.
Very last thing, Shane, a huge fight, undisputed light heavyweight titles on the line between Beterbiev versus Bivol. Craig Richards actually is out over...
He's been out there, yeah. He's back now. Yeah.
He's been sparring with Beterbiev. Who do you fancy in the fight?
I think Bivol's really, really underrated. I think Bivol's boxing ability, Gizov was boxing well against Beterbiev, and then he got stopped. I think it was in the 11th round, and the accumulation and volume got to him, but he hasn't quite got as good a feet as Bivol. Depends how Bivol approaches it. We know what Beterbiev is going to do. He's not like a complete out and out brawler, but he does cut the ring off. He's fantastic at doing that. And you know, he's on you, and he's letting his hands go. He's got clearly a phenomenal puncher, but where he's at in his career, at this stage of his career, I just wonder how many more performances he has left. You know, with 400 plus amateur fights, 20 professional fights. I know they've all gone. They've all gone before the final bell, but where is he? You know, how many more years can he continue to do? How many more performances has he got left in him? Especially someone that's going to be using their feet and dropping them out of range. That's energy sapping to track all the time. If you stand there and let him punch you, like it's like hitting the heavy bag. He'll just let his hands go and he'll overwhelm you. But by finding that space and working for that space, which I know Bivol's going to be doing, that's going to be draining him and sapping him. And Bivol's got a lot more power than people give him credit for. He's got, you know, because look at what he was doing to Canelo. Canelo's got a great chin, and he said, you know, he was punching hard. So it's definitely a very intriguing fight. I just wonder if Beterbiev will get old, like Golovkin got old overnight. And once a guy like that who can take a shot, heavy-handed, but once their speed goes down a little bit, they just become a little bit more predictable and a little bit stuck. And because they're not elusive and moving their feet, they're sort of tracking all the time, they can just get stuck in the mud a little bit and outpointed. And I just might be leaning towards Bivol 1 points. Interesting. Shane, thank you so much for an interesting conversation. No worries. Much appreciated, sir. And we'll catch up very soon. Cheers, mate. Thank you.